is that the emergence of Caribbean thought really developed in response to the colonial situation. Therefore, I have to spend some time detailing what do we mean by the colonial situation, that we are going to say that every aspect of Caribbean, whether it be sociology or politics and so on, have been in response to this colonial situation. So, as I mentioned, I have a few minutes. So, we have developed in the Caribbean a thought, streams of thought, which are equal to any in the world, and I emphasize that these patterns of ideas develop on colonial situation. That thought forward. We say you need to get theory. They say theories are important, ideas are important, systems of thought are important, because these are what build civilizations, actually. All right. So don't underestimate thought and the complexity of what goes into that. All right. When I talk about political ideas, I'm talking about ideas that have to do with how power is engaged. I'm talking about ideas to do with socio-political organization. How is have direct implications for practice. Sometimes ideas are just there for us to understand a situation more for what we call exegetical purposes, to understand a phenomenon. Okay, so question 2, where do ideas come from? Do they come from concrete material circumstances, or do they just come from elsewhere? This is an interesting discussion, because in the literature there are those more we call it Hegelians, or we call it idealists, who argue that ideas just are just there and they are profound. Nothing is more important than ideas. The others, like Karl Marx, who argues that no, ideas come out of concrete material circumstances. Ideas come from material circumstances. I'm arguing the latter for this presentation, but the whole point really is that the relationship between ideas and social structure, ideas and circumstances and so on, is very complex, and that will take us some time to make that delineation. So, now, in arguing, remember now my thesis is that the streams of ideas which have emerged in the Caribbean really came out of a particular context, and they were intent on dealing with that context. And that context is what we call colonial. Now, I'm restricting my comments to the Anglophone Caribbean, the British Caribbean, but of course there are many other Caribbean. Doesn't matter which one really. All these countries have passed through a similar trajectory. Okay, for example, all of these countries have been shaped by the same had population, at least most countries had. Then we have conquest, colonization, the whole thing called colonialism, work came after that, the creation of a Creole culture that my colleague will speak to later on. All right. So the fact is that all of these Caribbean countries have passed through a similar situation. All right. And so you can call that the colonial situation. All right. So again, I'm trying to keep my comments within the 20 minutes. So whole idea is because of colonization, is the drop. Idea word is very important. Word persons who came to the Caribbean, slavery days, had plantations, Jamaica or Barbados, lived here, thought they were Caribbean people, and developed a body of thought. This body of thought objectives. To the here to run our countries. All right, but I want to focus more on the first body of thought. We're going to call that a pro-slavery ideology. Pro-slavery ideology. So you talk about Brian Edward and Edward Long, important thinkers, British people in the Caribbean who developed this body of thought to justify slavery. Now, so the first body of thought really we had was a justification of slavery, and we call that pro-slavery ideology. I want us to understand that this body of thought in the Caribbean, not just in the Caribbean, we're focused in the Caribbean, crystallized into racist thoughts that persisted up to World War II. Of course, it does still persist in some way, but I'm saying in particular up to that point. All right. So, what were the particular content? I can't go to all of that. You have done it in history. What were the content? How did they justify this phenomenon called slavery? Because that became the first body of thought that we had. All right. So, these thinkers spent an enormous amount of time developing ideas, a coherent body of ideas, which was systematized and sought to say that slavery was right, and it was right on certain fundamental points. Okay? One of the points I argued, for example, was that there are fundamental differences between the mental structures of European and African peoples. All right, and that's very important to understand. That was, in fact, the basic idea of pro-slavery thought. All right, so they created the idea of European versus non-Europeans, and then constructed a view that the non-European was utterly inferior in terms of mental capacities. Now, these were ideas which not only cemented slavery, but also argued that non-Europeans were incapable, really, of spawning a civilization, incapable of developing systems of thought, incapable of running their own societies. Okay, you can understand later on the whole idea of nationalism, the whole idea of nationalist thought would be, of course, in response to all of those ideas which developed and were cemented in the post-colonial situation. All right, so just to say a few more things about the pro-slavery ideologies. The ideas of pro-slavery essentially said that non-white peoples were not able to appreciate art and to comprehend, scientific ideas. They were not capable of mastering nature and things like that because they were void of genius. All right. The idea propagated were in different categories, technological, biological, and things like that. But the point I want to emphasize, while I'm not going into all the intricacies of this pro-slavery ideology, the point I want to emphasize is that these ideas were concretized and passed on for a long time, okay? And of course, influenced systems and methods and institutions and things like that, okay? So remember now that my thesis is that the emergence of Caribbean political thought was in response to the colonial situation, part of which was an ideology which sought to justify the ignominy of slavery, and that was important to understand, all right? So, again, all of that is pro-slavery ideology. All of that has to do with giving biological, anthropological, and all kinds of arguments that were given. Now, you will understand that these arguments were accepted throughout societies, and even the best European minds thought that this was actually correct, okay? One of the reasons for pro-slavery ideology was to legitimize colonial rule, okay? If you're going to say that non-white people were not capable intellectually and many other ways, then you're saying they're not able to run their own societies, okay? And therefore others have to come in, take charge, and be there to protect the locals because they're not capable of managing such complex ideas as running a society, all right? So, having said that, I'm going to run to the other points here because my time is going. So, at least to get an idea as to the backdrop of the emergence of Caribbean political thought. It was really in response to the colonial situation, which has many aspects to it, okay? One of the first body of thought to develop in the Caribbean was what we call West Indian nationalism, okay? And that period at the end of World War II was very important. Now, Britain by that time had imposed on the region what is called Crown Colony government. And so West Indian nationalism was a movement not just of action, but of thought, which aimed to counter the ideas I've just mentioned, and to argue that no, Caribbean peoples are quite capable of managing their own affairs and ought to be allowed to do so. And we have quite a few nationalists who developed in the Caribbean, but I want to focus in particular on Eric Williams of Trinidad, because he certainly is maybe the creme de la creme of the nationalist movement and the nationalist idea. Part of why Eric Williams is so important. I could also mention people like Cipriani and Norman Manley, Adams and so on, but not for another time. Now, Eric Williams of Trinidad and Tobago was not just a leader, but a scholar, all right? Went to Oxford, got his PhD, but his books were crucial books in terms of outlining the situation, all right? So if you don't know about Eric Williams, know about him. Very important person. No, he had many books. He's one of the few Caribbean leaders who have left a treasure of writing. I mean, high-level writing, all right? Of course, Dr. Williams, Dr. Monica also was there for it. But let's talk, for example, about capitalism and slavery. This is an awesome book, an awesome book. When this book was published, and we know about it the other day, some press in England didn't want to publish it. Didn't want to publish it. And we knew it came out the other day. You know why? Because Eric Williams was going to argue that no, slavery didn't end really because of the good wishes and the wonderful thoughts of people like, of you're talking about, right? No, he argued that no, the historical interpretation of how slavery ended is incorrect. And he gave the evidence to prove that. All right? So Eric Williams argued that not to say that people like your abolitionists were an importance, but that slavery ended really due to economic changes in the fundamental basis of the capitalist system, which had changed and therefore required, not slave labor, but free labor. All right? And that was a fundamental reinterpretation of how slavery called the end of the nationalist philosophy or ideology. All right? So this is a very important book. All right? Again, I can't go through all of that because of time, but he was saying that, Clarkson, Buxton, Wilberforce, but no, the real reason were economic reasons, okay? Interestingly, you would have heard about the reparation movement in the Caribbean. I think our dean will speak to that sometime later on. That movement of Eric Williams, because Eric Williams, the connection between slavery and the development of the big names in Britain, people who have wealth, the Congleton and the Longs, etc., etc. So what William did in this book was to question the humanitarian. No, it was really due to the fundamental changes book called The Negro in the Caribbean, in which he was able to unravel the whole idea of Negro inferiority. William's argument was that all were really trying to justify an economic situation. All right? Because slavery was fundamentally economic. The ideas around slavery argued were developed to justify what was certainly an economic. He also wrote a book about British historians and the West Indies. And in this book, William went to task talking about the importance of Caribbean peoples to write their own history. And that's very important because history can become you have to understand how it is written because the writing of history is very important. What do you learn about yourself, who you are, and who do you think you are based on the evidence? So this book was also very vital. I'm running through to end so that my other colleagues can come on. Eric Williams, this book, The Education and the British West Indies, here Williams talks about the utility of a university. What should be the role of a university in society? Particularly in, say, Caribbean societies, coming from where we are coming from a colonial background. All right, so you argue, for example, that understanding, of course, the historical situation that has made us who we are. Eric Williams was your scholar, but he was also a practitioner, formed a party in Trinidad and Tobago, won election. He's enormously important. If you want to learn about Eric Williams, there is a book called Eric Williams, the library that gives his biography, enormously important from a perspective of scholarship and also from the perspective of a practitioner who brought Trinidad into independence. It shouldn't be a surprise, therefore, that Trinidad was one of the first countries to achieve Republican status. Barbados just got it, and I think Jamaica is going for it shortly. The whole idea of that, when we get to that, is that these societies have to evolve to a point where they have to accept themselves as having the capacity to be put in charge as they make their way in a very complex world. Finally, I've just mentioned the development of nationalist thought, but there are other streams of thought in the Caribbean. For example, a whole body of thought that gave foundation to Caribbean economics. Don't forget, my thesis is that all of these ideas were dealing with some aspect of the colonial situation. Take, for example, Arthur Lewis, the first black person to have won the Nobel Prize for economics. His theory looked into the assumption from Britain was that these societies, if you follow, for example, the comparative advantage thesis, these societies were destined to be perpetual. We can do better. And he was going to unravel and put that theory aside, arguing that Caribbean societies, by virtue of certain endowments, were quite capable of. That is just to explain to you, that was an indigenous ideology, thought, that was trying to deal with some aspect of the colonial situation at this point, of course, the economic. Even Marxists, we have Caribbean Marxists. Marxism didn't originate in the Caribbean. It's a European concept from Karl Marx. I mean, Karl Marx's book, of course, Das Kapital, and the one he wrote with Engels on Marxism. But we have had Caribbean Marxists who have taken Marxism, even though it's of course a European concept, and try to make it relevant to the ideas stream. Okay? The thought, of course, was this important Walter Rodney and many others, their contribution ways deconstructing these ideas and explaining the realities is indeed remarkable. So I'm coming on the last point is that my conclusion. Are with me, everybody?
Yes.
My what? My conclusion. My conclusion is that contrary to what some believe, the Caribbean region has had a tradition of
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, capable of learning. We had no brain, supposedly. So it is lovely to see how we have developed over time and changed these ideologies. Dr. Williams is going to go. Could we put our hands together for him?
Of as so this term creolization is at once loaded and somewhat incomplete, at once flimsy and all-consuming. Now, the brief contrasting language I just used to describe creolization indeed opens it up to understandings based on possible oppositional extremes. For instance, some think that creolization as concept should be reserved only for places like Haiti and New Creoles, born out of the imperialist colonizing process. while others would swear their very lives on their gut feeling, silently shaped by historical understandings, that creolization is applicable to much more than the formation of language. The diametric reality is split between the limited and widespread nature of the creolization, associated themes and understandings mean so many different things besides what we would need it to specifically mean in that moment, like this one, when an unambiguous understanding is desired. In the initial analysis, creolization is a concept that is open to many conflicting, incomplete interpretations. However, even having provided a brief proof of sorts that this term is likely to provoke meanings that are unsatisfactorily relative and potentially conflicting, we still find ourselves at a conceptual stalemate. At the risk here of committing to crass tautology, in its loaded sense, as encompassing the onset of a practical cultural awareness in the Caribbean from about the 16th century that was not wholly indebted to the shaping cultural and moral impositions of the master planter class of a European nature, but substantively so to the cultural and moral convictions of the millions of Africans that were kidnapped and shipped off to the Caribbean. I will leave you with two examples here of creolization continuously at work. Now think about our Caribbean music or our Caribbean folk music forms, like mento out of Jamaica, calypso out of where? Trinidad. What about merengue? Dominican Republic. All right. Now, these are creolized music forms because their strong rhythmic patterns connote an African source, over which were placed melodic and harmonic patterns reminiscent of the European classical and popular music modes. The point of contention here is that without the combination of both African and European elements, these music forms would not have Are these religions thus inherently erroneous because of their evil, quote-unquote, African influences? Or are they accurate, legitimate manifestations inherent oppositional impulses here of evil versus good, legitimate uncivilized, etc., etc. And ask yourselves, guys, which side of the Creole mentalized God, Bondi, a distinct deistical?
But where did they originate? How have they been demonized, stereotyped? The blacks were supposedly not able to truly celebrate a religion, but they were subjected to what they call basically heathen mumbo jumbo, right? And we're saying, is that really so? Is that really so? So we're learning a little bit about the various aspects. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear about Haiti. Let's hear about Haiti.
I think Dr. Williams really touched on my presentation. And we're also looking at the contribution of African American are made throughout the world. Right? Of course, those of you who are familiar with Haiti, this is our flags there, right? We just celebrated 219 years of independence. Those of you who know Haiti became what? The first black republic independent. I'll be in the field, right? Some of the people will be in the house. So that we understand. There are sometimes, I don't want to use those terms, right? And also we have the brown paper bag test, right? Y'all know what that is, right? The French Revolution, right? They declared the human rights. 1791, Bookman, that Dr. William become free. The mode of government is a republic. The president is 2022, I think, January 1st, it was 11.6 million. We have 9 departments, including the diaspora. Let's make it 10. The money that we use is called slave master could not come to Haiti and take them. Haiti was the first successful slave revolution. Of course, we know what Thomas Jefferson, the one mostly occupying most of the, I say, involved. Sometimes hear about from the media some attack on Haiti. You hear something about the dam, which is used to create electricity, generate electricity at that particular time. So therefore, things beginning to take a new life, right? Haiti, one section of Haiti, they started. We see the rice there, producing rice, right? Rice is being exported around the world. Sugarcane, cocoa, all these things, things are looking good. The number of families engaged in rice production, we have 93,000 families at the time, 20% of the population. So the economy was of the poultry industry, U.S. chicken, we have to people start going, people start cutting the trees and using that for charcoal and all this, right? Now, with all this shows in tons, the production of U.S. import rice from 1985 to 2000. Nobody's producing anything in Haiti. The trees that are there, people are cutting the tree down to use them for charcoal, right? The embargo, you have the Aristide and Clinton, what they did to Haiti. If you go to Haiti, there's one area outside of Port-au-Prince. The former President Clinton owned half of that town, right? When he invested in that town, this is where they have the bauxite from the ground. They can import them to the United States. What people see is going on there now, they don't work during the daytime. You see all those trucks, all the heavy equipment, they work at night, right? They do all these things, they put it on the boat, and then they go to the United States. So we don't know what they're doing. They're not creating a job for the local to be able to use some of the resources that they're taking out of Haiti. The lack of governance, poor condition of irrigation and all of this. And also, and then some of you might know that Haiti, the problem in Haiti is corruption, right? The government is totally corrupted in there. Peace, right? The Haitian government become marginal. That went to the people, you will not see right? Because your grandmother is not going to try to learn English for you. You learn her language, so you'll be able to speak to her. This is one of the the national anthem of Haiti. You can see this is the French there, and this is the English translation in there, right? For disappeared, you know what happened? That was under that regime there, right? And the people, the 17 guy who initiated the coup, they were all killed, right? So that was the guy here. So we go back to 1959, right? That's when he created that army. 1971, after he died, his son, Baby Doc, became president. They killed him, right? And they sent a force to Haiti, a group of people.
Haiti is so responsible for so many of the other countries. Haiti is so responsible for so many of the other countries becoming free. Yeah. I mentioned to my colleague maybe Jamaica should be on that list because it was after the Haitian Revolution that Jamaica had that major revolt, the Morant Bay Rebellion, and then we.
All the resources are being taken out of Haiti by the United States. Listen here, the largest embassy in the world, guess where it is? In Haiti. Guess who has it? The United States.
A way of life. It's more like, you know, Obia, if you're a cheater, Obia is like your mistress.
If you do have questions, I ask you to speak with them individually.
So the first place will receive an Apple iPod. Second place winner will get an EarPod, and the third place winner will get an Amazon Fire with Alexa. So Student Life will launch the event tonight by sending it to your emails with all of the rules, and we do hope that everybody.
Thanks to our panelists. One final thing. On the last day of the celebration, February 17, we're going to invite you to put on some African clothing, necklace, handbag, walk with something that represents the motherland, and that's going to be